Hey gang, it's Squill, and it's time we do it. It's time we finally talk about Fiona and Cake. The episode, not the spin-off. That's better. But for real, I've always been mostly indifferent to the Fiona and Cake episodes of the original series. But now that we've had 10 episodes to really get to know these characters, and we'll be getting at least 10 more, I think now would be the best time to look back on where these characters started, all the way back in Season 3. Right off the bat, I think it's pretty clear what makes these characters so inherently memorable, as Natasha Allegri's designs for Fiona and Cake themselves are just so iconic. They didn't do the typical cartoon thing, and just give Finn longer hair and makeup. Nah, Fiona does feel like her own character, albeit one that's still less interesting than the Finn that we've come to know. And I think one aspect of this episode that I overlooked before was just how much it plays with the character dynamics now that the genders are swapped. I mean, look at the Fiona and Cake dynamic. Compared to Jake, who was a more go-with-the-flow kind of guy, who only really gives Finn advice about PB if he specifically asks for it. Cake acts much more like a wingman to Fiona, actively trying to help her get with Gumball. We can also compare Fiona and Gumball's dynamic to Finn and PB. Obviously, Fiona and Finn are both very high energy and adventurous. But whereas Finn has to worry about whether or not PB will reject his advances, Fiona is stuck worrying about whether or not Gumball is making advances on her. There's almost sort of a subtle meta conflict of this episode, where Fiona is fighting the romance genre she's being forced into. Like, this heroic tomboy doesn't belong in this sappy romance fanfic. I mean, just look at the song in this episode. Gumball is singing about how beautiful Fiona is, and yet Fiona spends most of it fighting these gray orb things. This scene is absolutely gorgeous, by the way, very Aladdin-esque. I guess I just found it interesting on this rewatch how this episode plays with gender roles. Like, Finn wouldn't suddenly be way more into romance if he were a girl. It's an interesting exploration of the way women are often portrayed in media, and how harmful it can be to center all female-led stories around finding a man. And this is best exemplified by this scene in the bedroom. Now, obviously this ended up going in a different direction, but man, look at Fiona's face here. It's pretty clear what she thought was gonna happen here. They do an excellent job portraying the shock and confusion that women feel when a guy reveals himself to be a creep. I really like Cake's reaction here too. Her trying to protect Fiona is very sweet. Fiona's speech at the end is pretty on the nose, all things considered, but I think it's a message that a lot of people, especially young girls, need to hear. To value yourself as an individual above whether or not you're in a relationship. And also that Ice King is the hottest hottie. I mean, she's not wrong. But yeah, let's address the reveal at the end of this episode, that this was all a story being read by Ice King. Now obviously this is only half of what turns out to be a much bigger reveal way later down the road. But as I said in my Finn and Ice King video not too long ago, I do think that Ice King being so into these Fiona and Cake stories does show a progression in his and Finn's relationship. Also, seeing Finn's reaction here is very funny. It is a little strange that Ice King would write Fiona to want to marry him, as I highly doubt that was Prismo's doing. Later episodes just make Ice King want to meet and be friends with Fiona and Cake. You can argue that Ice King never actually wanted to marry Fiona, and that this is just a case of his ego showing through his writing, but it's still a little weird. Fiona and Cake is an episode with a very basic plot, which is something that I used to see as a negative. That this is just a generic Adventure Time episode, but with the genders reversed. But I don't see it that way anymore. Fiona and Cake uses the conventions of a typical Adventure Time episode to discuss gender roles and the way that women are portrayed in media. Something that cannot be achieved using Finn and Jake. I totally get why, despite only having 5 episodes in the original series, these two have their own fandom, merchandise, and multi-season spin-off. Please let me know your thoughts on this one in the comments, and have a good one. Squill out.